All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We have the one and only, the Shannon Joy, a.k.a. Shannon Joy. Can we just talk about this for a second? What's going on here? You've been banned from how many Facebook accounts now? 2?
3 at this. Well, no, 2 Facebook accounts and also my Twitter account. So some of your audience might know me from my Facebook. I'm Shannon Joy. I have a radio program every evening. And then on Twitter, my handle is at Shannon Joy Radio. It's essentially the same profiles. They piggyback off of each other. About 5 days ago, my account on Facebook was restricted 30 days. It was the most draconian
right.
Restriction that I've had to date. I have been, they'll take me off for a day, 3 days, 5 days. Now it's 30 days. Twitter, in the same vein, about
Facebook
2
got
days
all shut
ago.
down. You go start to really get fired up on Twitter, and the same thing happens.
And then I get shut down on Twitter. So at this point, I said, you know what? I'm going to go in and make my Bizarro account. So I switched the first letter of my name, my first name, my last name. It's now Shannon Joy, very European, soft J.
Yeah.
And it's my Bizarro account where I post when they throw me in the clink. And so they've just restricted my Shannon Joy account on Facebook. And so I'm assuming it's only a matter of time before they take me down on Twitter as well. So it'll be 4 total accounts. And it's crazy.
I mean,
crazy.
And this is one of the things that's really starting to piss me off, and so many other journalists around the world, mostly conservative. I mean, if you talk against anything that I call them liberal left-wing social media platforms don't want you talking against, their first kind of default action is to just silence you. And look, I'll pull up, looking at your account here, we've got your account here. It's just unbelievable that these are the types of things that they silence you for. Posting about the vaccine, laughing about the
vaccine. It's what I've seen as a common link is the vaccines. If you are skeptical at all, not even an anti-vaxxer, which I'm not and never have been, if you post about vaccines in any way that is critical or questions, if you're bringing I was taken down on Facebook for posting facts about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which has been pulled for safety issues.
Mm-hmm. So
I posted, the post said, interesting facts on the J&J jab. And it was a screenshot of Alex Berenson, basically just laying out, this is, there have been hundreds of reports, 70 came from Britain, 20 came from the US, 10 came from Israel or something. It was the most benign fact-based post, and they took that down. And it's one of the third rails in American politics today where you cannot talk about it. They'll let you get up and bash Democrats. I can go on and call Nancy Pelosi all kinds of names.
Right.
They'll allow that type of discourse. But if anyone touches that vaccine issue, and I can tell you from a national perspective, I'm probably one of the only commentators from the conservative right that regularly talks about, that is on a terrestrial radio station, WHAM 1180, Clear Channel station. We reach all the way up into Canada and down into, the South, 3 or 4 states deep in the evenings, that will consistently talk about the VAERS reporting and the safety issues, informed consent. You won't hear that on Sean Hannity. You won't hear that on Mark Levin. You won't hear that on any of the mainstream conservative outlets. And so it's always the vaccines. That's what gets me thrown in the clink every single time.
Right. And you're relentless. Every time you come back out, I'm like, I thought she would have learned by now. Nope. Your first post back is something along these lines here. This is your first post back.
It's a screenshot. My first post back is always a screenshot of the post that I was banned for.
Right.
And they never seem to catch that one. They're kind of dumb. I don't know how they come up with this stuff, but every time I come back, it is, I'm going to continue to push until they kick me off, which essentially might happen
To
at
be
any
honest,
time.
I don't think Facebook goes as far as kicking people off, because trust me, I've got a lot of friends on Facebook who, I mean, they have like 10 accounts and they're
Yeah.
still around after warning after warning after warning. But being thrown in this Facebook jail, I mean, it's almost worse because you're being silenced. You're not allowed to report on facts. And now, once again, you're silenced. I mean, you can't get your message out. And it's a very frustrating thing.
I think in some ways, though, it works to their disadvantage because then I become all the more elusive. People know I'm getting thrown. What is this girl from Rochester, New York saying that is so horrible?
Right.
That she is, Sean Hannity doesn't get banned from Facebook. The big talkers aren't getting banned from Facebook.
Well,
Tucker
because
Carlson,
they're talking highly of.
they're staying in the
vaccine.
box.
Yeah.
They're staying in the box in the game. And this is something that I touch on my show on a regular basis, is the political paradigm of left versus right, D versus R. And you're allowed to fight it out if you stay within that paradigm.
Right.
But if you venture out and you say, you know what, this whole thing is rigged. It's a WWE wrestling match. Every time you go up left against right, if it's the politicians, it's all scripted in many ways. And, I've come to the conclusion after observing politics for 8 years very closely because of my radio program, that you really are looking at, in many ways, not always, but in many ways, controlled opposition from most of the mainstream conservative right. There are some outlets that will allow a little more wiggle room. I like The Blaze. Steve Deace is excellent. Daniel Horowitz is excellent. Daily Wire a little bit, but even Ben Shapiro will stay in the wear your masks. Vaccines are good and safe and effective for everyone.
Has he in
yes.
favor? He has said stuff like that.
Huge disappointment. Wow. Huge disappointment, Ben Shapiro. Even someone like
Owens doesn't, though.
What was that?
But what about Candace Owens? I don't ever see her talking highly of it.
Candace Owens, I think it might be a little better. I need to check her out and see where she is. Michelle Malkin is great. Michelle Malkin will talk about informed consent and vaccine safety.
Right.
But for the most part, if you're a conservative and you want to get big and you want a big platform and you want to be syndicated or you want to make it to a bigger network, you got to stay within. Yeah, I was monitoring on Hannity yesterday.
Here's
and
Candace yesterday.
Caller called in. Don't wear. Okay, go girl.
Right.
There we go. So that's good. But she's more on the periphery. She's a peripheral talker. And I'm talking about the big dinosaurs, the big talkers. I used to lump Rush Limbaugh in with that. And, these are people I grew up listening to. I was a Rush baby. So I have a great affinity for conservative media, conservative talk radio. But in the past 4 to 6 years, they've really done, in my opinion, a great disservice to their audiences, because they will not point out some of these larger issues that are getting worse and worse in, medical freedom. This is really the only issue out there. Is it our body, right?
Yeah.
Do we have a right to decide what goes into our body?
Well, we certainly have a right, according to the Democrats, to choose to abort.
To have an abortion.
Right. So my body, my choice seems to only work as long as it fits their narrative.
If you're killing a baby,
my body, my choice when it comes to the vaccine, do you?
Absolutely not, because in abortion, you are cleansing society of the unwanted, right? And Democrat progressives love eugenics. And as long as you're decreasing the population, man, they're all for it. And so, yeah, your body, your choice. If you want to kill a baby,
freaked out about this vaccine right now.
Well, right. I mean, listen, this is a girl. I've gone down into the rabbit hole,
right,
and come out the other. And I've looked at every single conspiracy. I'm concerned about the safety of the vaccine. Do I think that it is going to usher in the end of humanity as we know it for all times? I don't know. I mean, there are half of the
Right.
scientists out there claiming that are guys who worked for Bill and Melinda Gates and Gavi for years. They've been in the vaccine industry for decades. They never saw a problem with Vioxx and any of the big scandals, HPV, removing religious mandates. All of a sudden, they found Jesus about 3 weeks ago, and it's the
Right.
end of humanity as we know it. So
Right.
I take that all with a grain of salt. You know, there are the conspiracy theories out there. My rule on conspiracy theories is nothing would surprise me. So they could be having, human sacrifices in the basement of the White House, and I wouldn't be surprised. But there's no way I can prove that stuff. So
Right.
there's enough really atrocious stuff happening that they're admitting to for us to grab onto and report that you don't really even need to go into the stuff that you have trouble proving.
Right. And that's what the most frustrating thing. I've seen your posts, and all you're doing is just trying to explain, listen, there's issues with some of this stuff that you all should be aware of. I just want you to be aware of it. And you still get thrown in jail. You still get shut down. And this is why I think people are really coming. I think the country's at breaking point over this. It started with Trump, then it started with other conservatives, then it started with just everyday people like ourselves trying to get our message out, trying to counter whether we want to call it BS, hypocrisy. And it's now to the point where no one's allowed to hear us anymore. And I think that's a very, very dangerous thing for America. And when Trump got silenced, I posted something on Facebook. I said, this is the dumbest thing that Jack Dorsey from Twitter could have done. Because what you're going to do now is you're going to force everybody who was originally allowed to vent their frustrations online. They're not going to be able to vent anymore. So what are they going to do? They're going to keep all that bottled up and ultimately go BLM on the country. I mean, let's be honest.
Stupid.
You got to release it somewhere. So would you rather have keyboard warriors having fun, harmless fun on social media? Or are you going to force that built up anger to be released out on the streets? So I think it's a very stupid and dangerous thing that they're doing. And you can play the whole, well, it's a private company, their platform, their rules. Okay, fine. But when this country does go, head to head,
we need new platforms. We need investors and entrepreneurs. And I mean, if there's one thing I've noticed in the past 12 months, there's a huge market for sanity, in every arena, in education, in healthcare, in media. And I think a decentralization of all of these real massive infrastructures, that have become very consolidated in the way that they do business, in the way that they report the news, the way that they, roll out policy. You see a policy in Sacramento, California, it's basically identical to the one that they're going to roll out in Rochester, New York. Everything's become very standardized.
Right.
And listen, corporatists love that. They'd love to standardize every human. They'd love for each one of us to do exactly what we're supposed to do at every moment in time, because then they have, they have their ultimate control. But that's not what real humans want.
Right.
That's not what real people want. And so
no, we want to be free.
Mission,
we want to be able to make our own decisions.
And interesting, and to have ideas, and to not be afraid to be ourselves. And that's what's getting lost.
Yeah. And what happened to critical thinking? We were taught to be critical thinkers. So this is the biggest frustration I have. And Shannon, you and I had a conversation about this last week. And then I thought, hold on, let's get on the show together and let's hatch this out.
Yeah.
I'm personally so frustrated right now. I had a very negative week last week, as you know.
I know you did.
You and I spoke to, you called me and you're like, dude, what is wrong? Like, what's going on here? We got to talk this through because
so you need a little pep talk.
Right.
Let's do a little pep talk.
Whenever I feel like putting right. Whenever I feel like putting the war paint on, I give Shannon Joy a call, and she calms me down a little bit because seriously, I think we're all at breaking point right now. And the reason I'm at breaking point is because Shannon, I feel we've tried to go the legal route. I feel like we've tried to protest. I feel like we've tried to rally. I feel like we've tried lawsuits. Nothing seems to be working. you know, Christina Maley Higley, a local resident right here in Rochester, you've been right there alongside with her from the beginning. I started getting involved a few months ago. She's got all these lawsuits going, which keep getting kicked down the road, judge to judge to judge. They keep recusing these lawsuits. So then I started voicing my anger on Twitter or on Facebook, saying, what's the point? Your lawsuit is only as good as the judge who's willing to listen to the lawsuits. So I just feel like we've got this freaking dictator asshole of a governor at the top. And as long as he's at the top, our lawsuit's going to work. Our protest's going to work. So I thought, fuck it. Let's go BLM on the country.
Well, and that's when, so, you know, I'm going to challenge that, not because I don't want you to think, or your audience to think, that I'm not as angry and frustrated and concerned, deeply concerned about the state of this country right now. I've been at a 10 probably for about 8 years. So for me to see people finally beginning to wake up with the appropriate intensity. Yeah. And on my program tonight, I talked about how we really, you know, when you look at our country, I was posting about Jim Jones in Jonestown the other day. I'm not sure if Jim Jones was a cult leader, and he created that commune. He was a socialist in Jonestown in Guyana. And they were the ones, mass suicide, 909 affluent. Yeah. They drank, you know, Kool-Aid laced with cyanide, mass suicide, because he convinced them that the world was scarier than killing themselves and, you know, ingesting poison in order to save them from earthly maladies that he invented for them. It was a psychological kind of operation. And in a lot of ways, our country, we the people, our citizens, have been psychologically abused by our government. And we've been groomed in the same way a pedophile would groom a child that he plans to abuse. We've been groomed to accept abuse from our government officials, Republican and Democrats. You look back to Bill Clinton when we were, you know, we're Gen Xers, but that whole scandal, here you have the president of the United States abusing his power with a woman, a young intern, and then lying about it. And admitting it. We all knew it. Yeah. It was slapped right in front of our faces on the kitchen table, and he gets away scot-free. How does that train a society? How does that train a people? It trains us to believe that our political system doesn't work, that they are above reproach. They can be corrupt. They can be immoral. They can do illegal things. And not just Democrats, but Republicans as well, right? That nothing matters. And so we've been conditioned, just think about in the past 12 months, the most intimate intrusions, nasal swabs. Mm-hmm. You walk into a healthcare, you know, facility, or a child walks into their doctor's office and they put a gun to their head to take their temperature. We're forced behind filthy, bacteria-laden masks full of toxins and just absolute filth forced on our faces. We have contact tracers that are asking the most intrusive questions. And so what you're feeling is appropriate. It's what things that I've been talking about for many years in my program that we've been conditioned to just accept. Right. Our politicians lie to us, all of them. Democrat and Republican, they lie to our faces, and they go into Washington, D.C. or into Albany or into a local office, and they're corrupt. They do the exact opposite of what they said they're going to do. And we have been conditioned to accept it. We're abused. So right now, what we want to do is lash out. And we want to, you know, and so when you do, when you're feeling that way,
I mean, listen, you're talking about, but
when you're feeling that way, it feels uncomfortable for you. When I see you feeling that way, it's good to me, because I'm like, yes, the American people, we are now beginning to respond appropriately to the oppression that we've accepted for so many years. So the way that you channel that, I can assure you, going all BLM is not going to work for us. Going all militia, getting your guns.
I don't mean to interrupt you just for a second. Yep. And you say that, but I can't but to think, why can't it work? Because look what we just saw. Look where
there's
the black
no
community
organization.
I mean, they've
You're
just taken to
putting
the streets and they're getting
right.
their way, though.
Well, you're putting the cart before the horse. Behind BLM is a massive organization of very powerful, moneyed people, mostly white men, quite frankly, just that you know. BLM
Right.
as an entity doesn't exist without the billions of dollars funneled into their organization by rich white corporatists and statists. So what you want to do is you want to have the BLM moment. I know you don't really want that, but the frustration is let's get our guns, let's get the militia, let's go fight back, let's
Call
do
the
this.
Proud
But there's
Boys.
right, there's no infrastructure underneath that. Let me give you an example of the founding. This is a great example. Okay. We need to think in revolutionary terms right now. We need to understand we are completely untethered from our Constitution. It's over. We are not a nation of laws. We are not a nation of the Constitution. Our politicians have failed us. Our courts have failed us. Our elected leaders and bureaucrats have failed us, right? We are untethered. So we need to see ourselves in a different arena at this point and understand that the founders of our country, they didn't have democracy. They didn't have voting.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have political parties. They didn't even have the intact court system that we have, but somehow they were able to win liberty. And so how did they do that? Well, it was through organization. There was the Revolutionary War when we went up against King George and the British Navy, which was the most powerful military force on the face of the planet at the time. We were a ragtag bunch of 13 colonies. We had nothing. But prior to that, 10 years prior to that Revolutionary War, when it came to a head, and there were some skirmishes, there were some battles, some people died, but we won. 10 years earlier to that, do you know what Sam Adams was doing in Boston with his group of political organizers? They were organizing against King George. And I always remind people, the way I remember it is sugar, stamp, towns, and tea. These were a series of taxes levied on the colonists that the British, because of Sam Adams' leadership in Boston, or that the colonists refused to comply with. Right. So he passed the Sugar Act, the Stamp Tax, the Townsend, and the tea. And every time the organized political entities in Boston said, screw you, King George, we're not paying it.
Right.
And that culminated in the British Navy parking themselves a warship in the Boston Harbor. That was 10 years before the Revolutionary War. And when the other colonies saw what they were doing in Boston, what Sam Adams was doing, they began sharing notes. They began to organize themselves. They began to build up an infrastructure, an organization of colonies. So then when it came time to organize the colonies against King George, they were ready to go. But it was the organization, it was building groups and standing up to tyranny and being courageous and modeling courage so that other people can be courageous as well. Those are the things that necessarily have to happen, because I assure you, if you try to go up against the federal government right now, you will be crushed. And this movement isn't ready. Most of our movement, those Proud Boys and those military, the militia men and all those guys, they're too chicken to go to Walmart without a mask on. You think they're going to take up their guns right now? You think they're going to get out on the street and wage a battle like BLM? Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. However, you would
and you know, if it was going to happen, it probably would have happened by now, to be honest. Right. And I've been wondering why. Listen, I'm not condoning violence by any means.
I know.
But I'm just trying to understand here, why are we bending over for this insanity? Why? Okay, forget the guns. Leave the guns in the Proud Boys home for a second. What the hell is wrong with us that nobody can rally in America to stand up for their freedoms like they are doing now in the UK, in London? 500,000 people, 500,000 people rallied in London. They are sick of the masks. They're sick of the lockdown. I posted, you saw that post, right? I said, this is what happens when people take to the streets. And what happened 2 days later, after 500,000 people rallied together in London, said, we're done with the mask, we're done with lockdowns, we are done with you telling us what to do. Well, 2 days later, the UK government allows the first event for the year to go live again. 4,000 people, no social distancing, no masks. They called it an experiment. You and I both know this isn't an experiment. This was...
They caved.
They caved. But they had to label it as an experiment. Right. Okay, we're going to do an experiment and let's just see how this gets on. No, bullshit. Yeah. You had no choice because the people rose up together and they rallied against you. Why aren't we doing that here in America? What is wrong with us?
I'll give you one word, and that's organization. We're not organized. Why do businesses and governments and school districts do what unions tell them to do? Why do you think that is? Because unions are organized. Mm-hmm. They're organized. They
look
meet.
At the teachers union.
Look at the teachers. They pay dues. They rally when it's time to rally. They file lawsuits when it's time to file a lawsuit. They will send letters and write emails and inform the community when that is ready. This is something that conservatives haven't done for 30 years. Earlier in this program, we talked about how I believe that conservative media has led our people astray for the past 30 or 40 years because we've trained all of our focus on national issues. We obsess. We go to sleep every 4 years. We'll come out of our hibernation and pull a ballot, maybe put a sign in our yard. And we think that our saving is going to come from Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or the next white knight who's going to ride in on a horse and save us. When the left, for the past 30 years, what have they been doing? Who is Saul Alinsky? He wrote Rules for Radicals. What is that book? It is the Bible to Hillary Clinton. It was the Bible to Barack Obama and also Bill Clinton. What was that book about? Community organizing. What was Barack Obama? A community organizer. What did Tip O'Neill say? All politics is local. Where is George Soros dumping his money?
Right. Not
in Joe Biden's campaign. No. He's buying up judgeships, county elections. He's dropping $1 million in Rochester, New York.
Shannon, I think we've lost. Oh, there you go. You're back now. We had a bad connection there for just a second, but I think you're back now.
Right.
There you go.
That does nothing. It is, can you hear me now?
Yep.
It is a local organization and a local resistance to globalism, meeting that at the point of implementation. Now that can be done nationally. You can teach, and I mentioned earlier in the program, what you see in Sacramento, California is the same as in Rochester, New York, is the same in Tallahassee, Florida, and in Texas and in Iowa. They cut and paste, they copy and paste. All of their tactics, their strategies are the same in every single state. So you can launch a resistance to that nationwide, but it's got to be decentralized and it has to be grassroots, bottom up, local. So training, this is stuff I've been doing for years. For years, I've been reporting on this and training people on how to do this. But that is, once people realize where their power is, then you're going to get results. And we saw this with Mendoza. We saw this with not Mendoza, but here locally with Carm Gamina,
right?
Who's one of our
huge win for Christina yesterday.
Yeah, me too. I had a little to do with it.
Yeah, no, you had a lot to do with it actually. Yeah, no, I mean, and we posted this morning about that, and I mean, we'll try to. I think we'll try to get Christina on the phone. I know she wanted to call in and discuss that a little bit, but yeah, that's what happens. Look, and this is what the sad thing is. This is what it took to finally bring him down. It wasn't the lawsuits. You know, you guys got a little bit too close to the truth. You started really running your mouths here. And he cracked under pressure, not because of the lawsuit, because of other stuff that's come up in the past.
It's interesting because, you know, in taking out corrupt officials is the fun part of this, if you can do it.
Right.
And it's really just about rooting out corruption. That's really, you know, if you are hardworking, diligent, and you are looking at truth and light, rooting out corruption over and over and over, And we did that all over the country. We'd have a different country very quickly. But what's interesting that was nuanced about the Gumina situation is that he had really bad press for a week. There's a nasty lawsuit that implicated, it was a sex scandal in this suburban school district. This superintendent is at the center of it. It culminates with the superintendent fabricating and conspiring to fabricate rape charges against his opposition. It was a coach that was having sex with the woman that, or Carm Gamina was having sex with. It's this just salacious, scandalous story, right? And that was bad press for him, but he knew that wasn't going to take him out. He knew that he was going, that was because the local media wasn't covering it.
Right.
In fact, even the national media didn't even mention him. It was reported in the Daily Wire, and they only mentioned the police department. They didn't mention the superintendent of the school, and he was going to get away with it. And it was other conflicts of interest and truly corrupt practices. The fact that he was funneling contracts to chosen board members that was uncovered by Christina, that she, put out. And it was then the revelation that the teachers unions had people and that they wanted to get him out because of, his abuse of certain teachers. And it was bringing all of that to light and being really transparent. And you see a lot of times these conspiracies, these type of things, that if it's dark, they'll wiggle out of it. They'll get out of it. They'll, pay off a union member or a union leader. They'll intimidate the right people, and they have the benefit of darkness. But when you push it out, and that's what Christina and I did doggedly for about 7 days, we continued to push it out with our alternate platforms. He couldn't escape. And
Right.
so that's why it's important to build up these networks. And that's what we've really done in Monroe County over the past 12 months with you and Christina and Jeremy Capel and Chad Hummel and Kimberly and, this whole group of cheerful warriors. But that's the way to do it.
Right. Speaking of the devil, I've got Christina Higley on the phone right now. Christina, how you doing?
Hey.
I'm good. Shannon, can you hear Christina all right?
I absolutely can, girl. You got to take a victory lap right now.
We wanted to patch you through just because, for those of you who aren't aware, Christina and Shannon have worked tirelessly to really try to get these kids back into school, try to get the masks off the kids. They've been threatened. They've had lawsuits thrown at them. They could have cracked under pressure, but they kept going. They kept pushing, and huge win for you yesterday. Is that when the news broke, Christina, yesterday with the superintendent of Webster School District?
It actually broke. Well, we had heard whispers of it in the community starting last Friday, but it officially broke at 7:30 a.m. this morning. And many parents and faculty members and employees of our school district are breathing a sigh of relief today.
Absolutely. And I posted this morning, I'll bring it up, and this just goes to show how many people are frustrated with these school districts, not just in, your local town of Webster, but throughout the entire counties. I mean, I wasn't aware of all the corruption within the school districts until you guys started cracking this case open. So I posted this morning, I'll just pull this up real quick. I posted congratulating Christina for the situation. I wrote, wow, I couldn't be more proud of Christina Malley Higley right now for her continued fight to take out the corruption within our school districts. One superintendent down. I'd be very worried if I were the others. Big win today for Webster schools. And what was interesting to note is all the people who said, besides you guys are absolute warriors for what you've done, but you'll see there's other comments. Is Fairport next? How about Brighton? Everybody's like, wait a second, what about my town? So it just goes to show that it's not just one district. There are these problems within our school system, not just here in the county or the state, but it sounds like we have a problem all over the country that people like yourselves are finally starting to crack open. Megan wrote, I'm glad he's gone. Believe me, I attended Webster schools all my life. Back then, he was a well-liked science teacher. On the other hand, he conveniently retired, so he'll be receiving his full pension, and we as taxpayers will be footing the lawsuit as he slithers out of the grass. Too bad he put his energy into having an affair instead of getting our kids back in school full-time. Can't wait to see who replaces him. Christina, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so these characters, they're in school districts everywhere, not just here in Monroe County, but across the U.S. And, I'll say it again. I've said it 100 times. I've mentioned it on Shannon's show when I've been on, that COVID dropped people's pants to their ankles. And through this, we've peeled back just layer and layer of this onion, right? And it just gets worse and worse, what we've learned about these people. And the reality is, many of these individuals, like Carm Gamina, do not care about the children. And I think that this goes to show that when parents activate and they want to, have justice and they want to bring things to light, that we can get it done. We're not going to wait on, the court system. We're not going to wait on all this. We have to, at our local level, organize and be loud and, take care of business. At the end of the day, the taxpayers, we should be deciding who's leading our schools, and we should have a voice in this. And I think that, he can run and hide, he can retire, resign, however he wants to spin it. But this is great news for parents. And I think this is just, this goes to show that people, they can organize within their own communities and they can make change too. And it's time that we take back the schools and we put the children first.
Absolutely. And and all of you have done an amazing job, and we can't applaud all of you enough. And, even after the corruption's been exposed, this is how crazy the situation is. And Shannon, you've seen some of the posts that have been going around. Even after these people get exposed, you still have teachers or parents defending these people, ashamed, accusing people like yourself and Christina.
They're on the take. These people are making money off of this. That's how deep the corruption is, to Christina's point. And people have to realize how much money this pandemic and this lockdown has dumped into your counties. Hundreds of millions of dollars being dumped into your school districts, dumped into your counties with absolutely zero oversight. They are paying off their cronies. They are padding their pockets. I got a text message today that I can't verify.
Can we just talk about this? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just got a text message today, and I haven't verified it yet, but we have now pharmaceutical reps saying that Mendoza is being rewarded off the books for hitting pharma goals, vaccination goals, with hot tubs and liquor and all sorts of other benefits. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it wouldn't surprise me, given the fact that they have lied about so many other things, given the fact that Carm Gamina put a for-profit vaccine company at acute kids on campus and shot up 100 kids with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that was days later taken off the market for safety concerns. How much money did they make on that day? 200 kids vaccinated. Mm-hmm. How much money did they make? It's a lot. And so it's widespread and systemic. And you are absolutely right, Matt. It's not just Monroe County. What we're uncovering here is happening in every single school district in the exact same way. You name it. Critical race theory, the bad sex ed curriculums, the corruption, the move to 100% remote learning, hybrid learning. That's happening across the country. But you were talking about Mendoza.
Yeah, so
you brought the screenshot up. Yeah,
you posted this last night, and I saw it come in as I was trying to wind down, and you dropped this bombshell. Was this you? I don't know who Lindsay is, but it says it's with you and your other account.
Yep.
Did you know that Monroe County legislator? Yeah, tell me about this here.
So this was just through one of our colleagues, our activist colleagues, Lindsay Royston. See Through New York Net is an entity I'd never heard of, but apparently it's a database, a searchable database. We can find out what people are, what kind of salaries they are receiving. And so this was on a text thread last night. Christina was on it as well. She sent these screenshots and I said, this is crazy. Mike Mendoza, who is our health commissioner, has been adamant that he hasn't had any overtime pay. He makes $200,000 a year. That's all that he makes. And what we find here is that if you look at the line item, Michael Mendoza, County Monroe, 206,174. Well, there's another line item for the County of Monroe to the tune of 179,000. Right. So nearly double what he said he was making. Now, these other Michael Mendoza, yep, right there it is. Well, what is the NYSLRS general employee? What got me, what I believe, censored on Twitter was when I started posting about this. And but they're not being transparent. And there's about $200 million in CARES Act money. I believe it's about 200 that's going to every county. And if you're all wondering why in a state like Florida, so Governor Ron DeSantis, he's the greatest. He doesn't have a mask mandate. He's not locking down schools. He's keeping schools open. And you're wondering, well, why in Florida are counties all over Florida still imposing mask mandates, still keeping the schools closed, still keeping the kids behind masks? Well, it's because the federal government is paying your local officials, unelected bureaucrats like Mike Mendoza, to continue the lockdown and continue the tyranny. They're being paid to do it. They're getting filthy rich doing this. And so that's why that bottom-up strategy, you can't fix this nationally. You got to go in with a scalpel and a team and an organization in every community like the one that we built here and fix it that way. And when that happens, it's going to change everything. It'll change the way your state governments work. Same with the judges. Yes, the judges are corrupt. It's rigged in a sense. But if you keep pushing and you keep pushing and you take it to the next judge, what they want to do is they want to run you ragged and wear you out so that you give up.
Which is exactly what they've been trying to do with Christina and all the lawsuits that she has going.
Yeah. And most people give up. They count on that. They count on the fact that most people give up.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? I mean, like I said, nothing seems to be working. Well, actually, one thing does seem to be working, and we'll take a look right now at this. For those of you guys who haven't seen in Arizona, because I'm sitting here thinking, what is wrong with the parents here? The only reason these kids are still masked up is because the parents aren't being loud enough. So is it because they support the mask mandate? I mean, all I hear on Facebook is how pissed off parents are, and they're screaming, and we need to protest, and we need to go up against this. I hear a lot of online rah, let's take down, let's take over the world, but I don't see anybody doing anything about it.
Yeah, right now it goes back to, I went on a tangent, but I was talking about the psychological impact and how we're kind of conditioned to accept this. The way that you break out of that is with groups. Okay. Nobody wants to be alone in the fight. Nobody wants to be the first person to take the mask on. Nobody wants to be the first person at the board meeting. It takes time for people to gather the courage. You need a couple trailblazers who will go out. They'll be the tip of the spear and they'll show people this is okay. What you're doing is critical. Cancel the Mask or I Cancel You is one of the best sites that I've seen in terms of this phenomenon. Helping people to find one another so that they are brave enough to go up against the system. No one wants to do it alone and they keep us isolated. So what you saw in Arizona is a group. And notice what they have kept us from doing for the past 12 months. What have they kept us from doing? Meeting, coming together, forming groups. Yes, we're doing it on social media, but that's not as impactful as doing it face to face. The good news, Matt, is that it's happening here in Monroe County. Slowly but surely, people are finding their courage. Your page, Cancel the Mask or I Cancel You, is giving people the courage to go to Wegmans and Target and take off their mask. And when other people see that, then they see, okay, it's all right, I can do it. And if that continues to happen, it will eventually snowball. it will become a tipping point, and you will see a mass awakening. I'm telling you, it's going to happen.
Well,
I'm
let's take a
telling
look
you
at
it's
this video
happening.
right here, which what
Yep,
this
check it out.
So for those of you who don't know, in Arizona, here's a group of people who went to the board meeting. These parents in Arizona had enough. They basically ran the Board of Education members out of the building, who I believe abandoned their posts and quit, and they took over, and they took it upon themselves. They took it upon themselves to end the mask mandate. They had enough. Let's listen to this real quick.
Take this away from us. These are our kids. We have we have bills in the Constitution in Arizona that give us parental rights. They are inalienable rights. They do not have the right to take them away. And yet this state and this board has taken it away from us. And they have the audacity to leave when we come here as peaceful parents to talk to them?
I have no control over them, but you're not going to be unruly here. And it's their request.
We will totally line up and one person come in at a time. We
Okay,
just want our
then
right to speak.
Then work that out with them, but tonight's not the night.
Why don't you jump forward and be our mediator
That's
and
not
go
my
talk
role.
to the board,
It's not my role, I'm sorry.
send another officer in to be a little person.
Take this away from us.
So, and this is the frustrating part, Shannon. They're sitting there screaming, "We want to talk to the board. Why can't we talk to the board?" And the officer's sitting there, well, you know, that's something you're going to have to talk to them about. Well, they're not making themselves approachable. So how the hell are they supposed to talk to them?
They lock the door. That's the thing. You keep pushing until they crack, until they break. And that's what's so brilliant about this is they wouldn't back down. They wouldn't give up. They clearly had some leadership there in that group, and they had a plan. They had a strategy. And what it culminated, it exposed the board. They were so afraid that they locked these people out and then snuck out the back door.
Yep. Yep,
and abandoned their post.
Yep.
So these people went in. You can tell they had a plan, because the most hilarious part of this is they used Robert's Rules of Order, which
Right.
is this is stuff that they invoke in the Senate and in Congress about meeting laws and the basic structure of how you conduct government meetings. It's brilliant. They went in and voted out by they established themselves as the new school board, voted out all the other people, and then repealed the mandate. And now the school board is like, well, what do we do now?
Right.
It's brilliant.
They took it upon themselves to implement a new board.
It's brilliant. Now, of course, the existing school board that ran away with their tails tucked
Right.
is going to say, "Oh no, that's not fair. You broke the rules." Well, what does the community see? The community wants the masks off. The community wants a school board that is transparent and that respects the will of the parents and is going to protect kids. So who do you think is going to win in this battle? The new renegade parents that came in
Right.
and took control versus the tail tuckers who ran away the moment it got a little hot. See, these local officials do not want to have to deal with your questions. And they don't want to have to deal with all of their glaring inconsistencies and lies that they've been paid very well to perpetuate over the past 12 months. And these politicians at the local level are not nearly as insulated as your senator or your congressman or your governor. Believe me, Andrew Cuomo could care less when you bring 50,000 people to Albany. He could care less when you launch lawsuits against him. He has 1,000 right before yours. That he has a team of attorneys. He's using your taxpayer money to defend himself, right? But your local school boards, man, you get 10 parents to call them and they are peeing their pants.
They buckle.
Like that.
Yeah.
So that's the key.
So, I mean, the parents have to want it first, though. The people
Yes.
have to want it here. And it's not just here locally, but it's this is an issue throughout all mostly Democratic states and a few Republican states, because even though they've lifted the mandate statewide, local districts are still demanding that these kids come masked up. So what needs to be done? This goes back to what I said earlier. We have tried everything. What do we do now? I mean, before it starts to get really ugly, because Shannon, I don't know how much people can take. I don't know how patient we could be before we just snap.
I think you continue to do what you are doing, and we have to wait. And this is a conversation that I've had with Christine, a lot of the leadership and people like yourself you are now pledging your life, your honor, and your sacred fortune. See, this is what we need to preserve liberty for our kids for the next 100 years. That's the nature of the battle that we're in. This is a once in a 100-year moment in our country's history. This is our time to stand up. This is our calling. And someone like yourself, you've taken this up, you've pledged it, right? We tend to be way ahead of the curve.
Right.
And I've learned in the past 8 years that sometimes I just have to wait. Like, you have to wait. And that's actually a Saul Alinsky principle, even though he was a despicable person and dedicated his book to Lucifer. But one of his principles was never get above the heads of your people. You are going to be out in front of them because you're a leader. A lot of the people watching this program are in leadership positions in their own communities. You're going to get to this before other people get to it. And sometimes you just have to wait, but keep doing what you're doing, right? You have to persevere. You have to be persistent. You have to stay in truth and transparency. That, if you get into the weeds and you get into the darkness, you're going to get bungled up. Because truth and light, it's that sunlight that is the best disinfectant that really causes these people to scramble. But what they expect, what always happens, we always give up. We always give up. We hit that first brick wall, and most people say, doesn't matter what I can do. And believe me, I've been in this 8 years. Okay. And I had all of the political people patting me on the head, or whatever, Pollyanna. You don't understand how politics works. You don't understand, and my military guys.
It's like, no, but I know how freedom works. That's all I give a shit about. I know how liberty
and what
works.
I've learned, what I've studied now for 8 years is organization and how organization works. And that doesn't mean that there aren't times when it is necessary to take up arms, when you have to defend yourself because there is in a government reach so egregious that, you believe me, if someone tried to come and harm my child, I'd use deadly force in a moment. I'm a concealed carry pistol permit holder, right? And sometimes you have to do that as a nation as well. I'm just saying right now is not the time. We can't. We have to organize first. And what you're doing from the media angle, it is necessary. We need a new media. We need a new independent.
We are the new media.
Yeah.
I mean, this is right-wing media, isn't? And I was on with someone else a few weeks ago, and we were talking about that very fact. The local media here, I mean, you might as well be watching CNN, but on a local level. It's very biased towards the left. And even nationally, you don't really have a good news source who is going to cover that right-wing reality, or at least,
or not even right wing, just common sense. Right. At this point, you have team reality versus team lunacy.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you have people we have the best opportunity. They are so out on a limb right now with their absolute lunacy. It is a golden opportunity for us to just pick up and seize this nation back. It just takes people who are willing and courageous to do it. And they can come from political parties. Jose Payo is a city councilman in the city of Rochester. He's a Democrat.
I had him on our show.
Love him.
He's great.
There are some Republicans.
He's
a Democrat. Registered
You'd never know that. He's a great
Never
guy.
know it. There are a handful of locally elected Republicans, Paul Dondorfer and George Hebert and Tracy DeFlorio are the names that come to mind that will consistently help us to call out Mike Mendoza. We need more of those kind of people from both political parties to combat the lunacy. The battle is liberty versus tyranny, period. It isn't left versus right. It isn't Republican versus Democrat. Remember, it was President Trump, unfortunately, who ushered in the single greatest tyranny this country has ever seen in the history since its founding. And he did that with the nationwide lockdown, 2 weeks to slow the spread. That was his executive order. Operation Warp Speed, which is culminating in potentially massive coerced or forced vaccination, was executive order from President Trump. So we need to accept these truths. That's one of the first steps, is accepting these truths, but never being afraid. And you know me, I walk in faith. My faith drives everything that I do. I could not talk about my organization and my work as an activist if I didn't talk about my faith. Because the truth is, it is too bad. Only God can fix this.
Right.
Only God can fix. We need miracles. We need miracles, and we also need to expect miracles. Because when we align with God, he is a mighty, mighty force. And the founders did this.
Right. And
the founders aligned with the natural God.
Absolutely. And I want to remind all the parents out there who are discouraged and who have lost hope and who are at the verge of their nervous breakdown. Let's just remember what happened to those bars and restaurants in New York City or to the gym in Buffalo. What caused them to open? Protest. Massive protest, standing up, creating autonomous zones. They pushed back. These gym owners racked up literally millions of dollars in fines. They didn't care because they fought for their freedom. They fought for liberty. So standing on the doorstep of a school district for an awkward 30 minutes is the least we all can do right now. You have these people who risk going to prison over this nonsense. Imagine if Rosa Parks actually got off the bus that day and said, okay, fine. Imagine if Martin Luther King said, screw it. You know what? I don't need this shit. I'm just going to go home.
Yep. We're not being asked to storm the beaches of Normandy.
Right.
All right.
Right.
We're not being, okay. Let's go to a board meeting.
We just want to get a little bit loud here at a board meeting. It's not
Take
the
your
end of the
mask
world,
off.
people. Take the freaking
Get your
mask
off. Take your mask off. That's the start.
Absolutely.
That'll be the beginning of it. You're right.
So fine. I'm going to leave the war paint. I'll leave the war paint in my closet for now.
You can wear it. Wear it to the board meeting.
I think people think I'm already freaking crazy enough for all the shit talking I do on a daily basis. But I'll leave it at home for a minute. Okay. We'll try it your way, but we got to do something because right now it's not working. And we need to do something quick before everybody gets to breaking point. Because I'm telling you, once we get to that point, Shannon, there is no going back. And it's going to make, and I always tell people real quick, it's going to make BLM look like a damn picnic.
Well, let's do this. Let's pledge to do a rally. We need we've done rallies. We're getting into protest season, summer months. Let's pledge to do something big. Let's do a protest, a lockdown protest. Let's get 1,000 people out in the streets in Rochester, New York. Let's figure out how to do that. How do we get 1,000 people out in the streets in Rochester, New York?
People. We don't need 30, okay. 20. It's not going to get the job done. Okay.
Well, no, it has been. Just don't poo-poo it. It is very effective.
But listen, listen, London. Okay, I know London's a bigger city,
right?
But they gathered 500,000 people.
I know.
Poland,
I go to New York City,
Germany.
I'll tell you what. Yeah.
Let's go. New York City has people. We can
rally
do it. The troops, but we got to get that message. Maybe I'll start an email list. We'll see who our true patriots here are in New York State, and we'll gather the troops offline because it's not getting done in these Facebook groups. Maybe we need to take this thing offline and start getting serious.
We got to figure out how did London do? How did they get 500,000 people? I mean,
well,
here's the thing. These rallies are tough. Everyone on your email list tells you that they're going to show up, and then they're like, "Oh, my babysitter canceled. Oh, I have a crink in my neck. Oh, I'm having a bad hair day. I can't come." Yeah. It is like herding cats getting people, but it can be done. I think that we are at a new level of intensity and frustration that you are picking up on. So people now want to turn out. So the time is right. Let's do something.
It is. Guys, we got to do something quick because I'm telling you right now, don't wait until you too lose your job. People have lost their jobs. People can't eat. It may not have happened to you yet, but if we don't get this country back on track, track. It's going to be a trickle down effect at some point. I mean, how many people do you know, Shannon, that they're losing their jobs every day now? And they're leaving the state. They're being driven out of their own state. Well, not everybody can pack up and leave.
Do you know what I'm getting, I'll tell you what, I mean, not only are people losing their jobs and their livelihoods, and they're suffering from the most horrific mental health, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, depression, alcoholism, drug addiction, cutting. The stories that I get on a daily basis, I get so many emails from people whose parents are dying in nursing homes, alone and isolated, dying, starved to death, isolated, tortured to death in nursing homes. It's happening before our very eyes. People who are in the hospital with blood clots. I've multiple firsthand accounts of people. You know, like it's bad out there.
And people are still going on the news and thanking the nursing home for finally letting them in to see their parents. I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing? You're thanking the nursing homes for finally letting you go see your dying father, who you probably pay $5,000 a month to. It's just egregious. It's insane that people are like, I got the vaccine, I can finally go live again. No, you didn't need the vaccine to go live a free life. You were granted that right at birth as an American. So I don't know why we're buying into this bullshit. And it doesn't help when people are taking selfies of, hey, I get to go see my dad today. Thank you so much, Mendoza. It's like, no, Mendoza's the asshole who prevented you from seeing him the last year.
Yeah, it is a cult. We're dealing with cult mentality. Right. And so it doesn't make any sense. It's by nature irrational. It doesn't make any sense. And in order to get out, that's why you got to like slap people like Cher and Nicolas Cage.
Which is I do every day, 10 times a day.
Smack them across the face. Snap out of it.
I mean, I just had this up a minute ago. What does it take, people, to wake the hell up and realize we are the last stop? Like, that's it. And listen, the reason I'm so vocal, people are like, dude, what, like, why are you so upset? I'm upset because I've lived in Shanghai, China, 10 years in a communist country. I loved it. It was a beautiful country. Some of the best years of my life were in China. Why? Because I'm American. I didn't give a shit. I wasn't going to try to change China. That's their government. It's their communist party. I always knew I had America to go back to when I had enough of experiencing a communist country. I lived in London for 5 years, so I got a taste of socialism/capitalism. They aren't anywhere near as free as us. They have the right to assemble, but under certain rules. Their freedom of speech only goes so far. And I never cared. I wasn't there to change the UK.
Right.
But when I wanted my freedom back, when Julia and I had our son in 2017, we decided, are we going to China or are we going to America? Well, the choice was obvious. We're going to go live in the freest country in the world. I'm going back to the country where I adore and love to death. Well, 2 years later, I might as well have gone back to China. So that's why I'm like, guys, I don't think you understand. I'm screaming about this on a daily basis because we are the last stop. There's nowhere else to go after this. And if you give them an inch, they're going to take a freaking mile. And they are.
Absolutely. Well, and this will make you feel better too. You have a unique vantage point because you were able to see tyranny up close and personal. And so you can see it in your own country in a way that a lot of us, like I said, we've been anesthetized to it. We've been groomed by the megalomaniac control freak lunatics in government and in our bureaucracies that abuse us on a daily basis. So we are an abused society. We are a conditioned society. And so to break out of that cult thinking, you need people like you to slap people upside the head and tell them how it's going to go. But this will make you feel good. And this will make your audience feel really, really, really good. Most people, from your perspective, I learned this lesson as a radio host. When I got into this business, I became a radio host and then became an activist very quickly an activist first. I was a host for about a year. I realized how messed up this whole country was, how corrupt, how the two parties were in cahoots. They were a unibrow. And I'm like, holy crap. And I morphed into an activist probably a year into my 8-year career as a host. And one of the things I always thought at the beginning was that I need to change everyone's mind. There aren't enough people. We need everyone to think the way that we do. We need everyone to wake up. We need everyone. We need millions of people across the country. And when we have an election and we win an election, it gives us the feeling, right, that everyone across the country thinks like us, and they have awakened. But it's not real. The truth is that meaningful and impactful and sustained change, right? We want to win the next 100 years. That's what we're playing for. Okay. You only need a small minority of motivated, passionate individuals who are committed to the principle of liberty.
That's all it ever
The
took.
rest of, that's it. 10%, probably less than 10%. Everyone else out there, most of the people out there are basically clueless. They'll live in communist China or socialist London or free America.
They don't know any better.
And they don't care. They don't know. These battles are fought in the periphery. Right. And right now on the left, you have a well-paid and motivated, passionate group of people who are committed to tyranny. And we don't have anything over here. So we're in the process of building up our opposition, and we will fight on the periphery. The muddled middle, they're never going to come along. They're just going to go along with whoever they think is winning.
As long as they go to work, get their paycheck, come home, they're happy with that. Right. And that's why I say,
they might even like what you say.
Lose their job to finally be like, oh my God, shit, this is not good. Maybe then they'll be angry enough to finally do something.
Well, and that's the thing. And a lot of them will like what you say. I have so many people who listen to my show and they're like, oh, Shannon, we love to hear about your activism. And we're so glad you do what you do. And they don't do jack. But they still like to hear about it. It makes them feel better.
Right.
So that's okay. You don't need them. You need, what do we have in Rochester, New York right now? We have about 3 or 4 media people. We have about 3 or 4 activists. We have a couple different groups.
Right.
There are less than a dozen of us. Yeah. And we are shaking things up in
it doesn't take much. You're absolutely right.
Way.
It doesn't take much. Well, Shannon, thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation with you today. I knew we'd have a great time. Guys, for those of you who don't know, we've been talking with Shannon Joy. Shannon has a phenomenal show every night, 9 p.m. You can listen to her on 1180 Radio Wham. You can also listen to her on iHeartRadio. You can visit her at theshannonjoy.com. Follow Shannon. You'll learn so much from her. I love talking to Shannon about politics, about activism, about patriotism, liberty. You're just going to love listening to her. So make sure you tune in and you'll get to know Shannon a lot better on her own show. But thank you so much, Shannon, for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
This was really fun. And Matt, I love talking to you too. You challenge me, you think differently, and this is what has to happen. And what you are doing is so incredibly important in this community, needs to be modeled all over the country. You're a really important voice. And as soon as I have a chance to get you in to my show, I'd love to have you come on as well.
Absolutely.
In the evening. So 9 to 10 p.m. My website is probably the best place to find the show, theshannonjoy.com. And you just click right on there. You can listen online every single night. So
excellent. Well, make sure you guys tune in. We'll continue this fight together. Thank you so much. You guys all have a great rest of your night. We'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. I got Jeremy Capel on tomorrow at 3 p.m. Jeremy has a huge following, great patriot. So make sure you tune in to tomorrow's show where we bring you more liberty and more fight for our freedoms. You guys have a great rest of the night.
That was fun.
Bye, Shannon.